We're back with an action-packed episode of Star Trek Picard, quite possibly the best episode of the season. And I actually said that last week. I said it's the best episode of the season, but this week's episode is even better than last week's episode, and there is so much going on here, and we have the full reunion of the cast. Not necessarily all together, but we have every single member of the Next Generation in this episode physically, not via holocalls or projections or anything like that, but actually here. And we find out sort of like maybe what the end game is, or at least a clue of what the end game is. I don't know. I can't spoil it here because, as always, my reviews are full of spoilers, but I got to give a warning to those of you who haven't watched the episode yet. So if you haven't, don't watch this. But if you have, strap in because we're about to jump into my show notes and go through because there are lots of different things happening in this week's episode, which is called The Bounty. So you've had your warning. I'm going to do a countdown. 3, 2, 1. If you don't want things spoiled, don't go beyond here. So we start off with a meeting of ships at a beacon in space, and we've got the Shrike here, and Captain Vadic is, rah, where are they? Pissed off. Makes her speech, shoots one of her officers who's questioning her. So, we get an intro of like, this is a really important thing, and she's upset. And she doesn't want to get in trouble with her bosses, whoever they might be. And then we are back on the Titan, and it turns out that Jack has told Beverly everything. So he full breakdown of all of his issues, and turns out she did a scan, and she's concerned because he's got something called Irmotic syndrome, which he inherited from Picard, which is this overclocked brain, and he might have decades, but I didn't remember this, but it turns out that this syndrome is a rare neurological disorder which results in the collapse of the synaptic pathways of the brain. And Jean-Luc was originally diagnosed with this when he was captain of the Enterprise D in an alternate timeline in the final Next Generation episode, All Good Things. However, this timeline never came to pass. But then, at the end of Picard Season 1, Jean-Luc Picard was killed by his syndrome, right? And I didn't remember that. But his consciousness was transferred to his artificial body that he's using now, which means he could continue on. And Season 1 was a while ago. I didn't remember all the fine details about why his character died off and was put into the body. So it's interesting. So they have a heart-to-heart. Then Worf and Raffi are on board. And I love the joke about sour mead, which is the Chateau Picard. He's like, we get this speech about Changeling's War, the Starfleet Violence, scars and shame on both sides. It's time to head to Daystrom Station. So this is going to be a heist episode because we need to find out what did Vadic really steal, because the portal device was just something else. That was just like the smoke. They need to find out what she actually stole. So when they warp in behind the moon at Daystrom, this is really cool. They are nailing the visuals, although I still think the best shot of the season was the previous episode where when they blew up one side of the engines on the other ship and it was coming up behind them and like gonna fire torpedoes at them. Oh, that was such an epic shot. It's going around social media right now, and it is really just an epic shot. But they're pulling out all the stops with this season. There's also this brilliant moment where Worf and Raffi and Seven are preparing, and there's this tension between Seven and Raffi, and Worf's like, I have gone into battle with lovers on countless occasions, and Seven interrupts. She's like, I'm not going. He's like, oh, what a relief. I was practicing deceit. Like, breakups on my homeworld seldom happen without bloodshed. It's just, I was practicing deceit. Like, he doesn't just have to say, I was lying. Riker's going to go with them. And then as they get in on Daystrom, boom, here's more ships warping in. They've got transporter inhibitors. They're locked onto the Titan. Picard's like, we need to run. And LaForge's daughter, who's like, we can't come back unless we're no longer tracked because they're going to know we're here. And Picard's got a plan. So off they go. Meanwhile, they're on Daystrom, Riker, Worf, and Raffi, and they're going through, and there's an attack tribble and like the red stuff and all sorts of dangerous things here that Section 31's been keeping. And then we start hearing music notes going off in the background, and we see Moriarty, and he's got a real gun, and it's, is he like the security for the station? Meanwhile, we're back to the Titan, and they've warped into this fleet museum where Geordi LaForge is present as the Commander, Commodore. I didn't quite catch his, maybe they said it and I just forgot, but he's here and he's, in charge of all this stuff. It's a brilliant info because he's very uncomfortable that they're here and he's stressed out. Curt nod to his daughter, brought along his other daughter, But it turns out that they're not going to be able to enact Picard's new plan because all the new ships are linked now. So they're like a shining beacon, which is how the changelings knew where they were, and it's only going to be a matter of time till they figure out where they're at now. Meanwhile, back on Daystrom, Moriarty's the security. These music notes are happening. Riker's hearing them, and he gets this flashback to, I think it was season 1, but it's a beardless Riker in the woods. I think on one of the holocrons, one of the holocrons. I'm thinking Star Wars, one of the holodecks with Data doing the "Pop Goes the Weasel" song, and then we get the intro and we see Data, and he's locked in stasis, and so now we've got almost the whole crew assembled. It's going to be at the end when we get the whole full crew here. Um, but it turns out this isn't actually Data because Data's died a couple of times. This is a combination of Laura and Data, and we see this entry from Soong, who created them, and talk about the age and totality. He hoped that this would be the ultimate project where he was going to put the best of Laura with the best of Data into this new, body that had aged. But he died before he could complete the project. So whatever's left in this body, which is in stasis at the moment, is going to have a bunch of personalities within it. Back to the other, ship museum, and Geordi's daughter is having this heart-to-heart with her dad. She's pissed that he won't help, and he's like, "Look, I got to protect my family. I need you to stay back here with me with a cover story." And she's like, "No, screw you. We need to help them. This is what Starfleet is." And he's like, "No, they're just your crew." And she's like, "No, they're my family, and I'm not the one that's scared to help them. You are." And so I was like, the speech. Meanwhile, Jack is using his charisma to convince both of Geordi's daughters, "Would you like to commit some larceny?" And flashes that smile, and yeah. So yeah, there's some stuff that's about to happen, which was great. It turns out that Starfleet installed Lord Data to protect Daystrom. He's the manifest. And then we're back to the Titan, which suddenly cloaks, and all these weird things start happening on the ship. And it turns out that Jack and Geordi's daughters stole a cloaking device off of one of the Klingon vessels at the museum and installed it on the Titan. There's automatic alarms going off. They're going to blow up the ship. And Geordi finds himself getting sucked in no matter what because he's going to have to engineer a fix so the ship won't explode. And he walks into the room and he's like, just takes one look at Jack and he's like, "You stay away from my daughters." Meanwhile, Worf, Riker, and Raffi have got to take the Data Lore hybrid with them. So we're setting up the next crisis here nicely, I think, because we're going to have the combination of personalities going up in his head, but also here comes Picard with the Titan, and they get in here, and as they're transporting everybody off, Riker gets shot in the back with a transporter inhibitor, so they can't beam him off. So we've got two crises happening at the same time. We've got Riker captured, and we've got the Lord Data personality issues. So they wake Data up. He's not certain of who he is. They ask him what he was stolen. The changeling's main objective, and he starts repeating Jean-Luc Picard's name over and over and over, and then it's Lore, and then it's B4, and then Soong, and he's talking about, I am more, and he sees these, different things, and he finally shoots out this projection out of his eyes, and it turns out that what the changelings stole were Jean-Luc Picard's remains. And then we get this other scene where Vadic is one of the changelings on Daystrom, and she shoots the other ones, or she shoots the other officers who may not be changelings, and transports Riker to her ship, and she's got Deanna. And whether or not this is the real Deanna or it's a changeling Deanna, it's got to be the real Deanna, because that would be the only reason that they bring her in so close to the end of the season, I would assume. But this is the end. Whole crew is together now. Great way to add a crisis on top of another crisis. So yeah, I mean, just there was no holds barred in this episode. It was just like jab, jab, uppercut. Like they never stopped. It was just action packed, great visuals, just nonstop, plot point to plot point to plot point to plot point. We're just spinning things out and working towards that conclusion. But best episode of the season, I think. Like, it just keeps getting better as we get deeper into this. So I'm a big fan of everything they're doing here. Really enjoyed the episode. Love to hear your thoughts on it. Drop them down below. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Support if you can. Membership, super chat, super thanks. The Patreon page. Join our Discord. Links are down there. I'll see everybody in the next episode. Till then, have fun.